Good evening, everybody. Today is June 25th, and we welcome you here to the council chambers to join in for the town council meeting, which is about to start to take place. And as always, we do start with the Pledge of Allegiance. There are a couple of Girl Scouts here. I don't know if we want to call you up and put you on the spot, but if you'd like to come forward and lead us in the pledge tonight to the flag, we'd love to have you come up. Ready, girls? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Sue, could I ask you for the roll call?
Councilman DeCruz.
Here.
Council Vice President Collins.
Here.
Council President Healy.
Here.
Councilman Veely.
Here.
Councilwoman Gledhill.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. And as a reminder, I would just ask everybody, when you are speaking tonight, sometimes it's hard for the people to hear at home when they're watching on their own TVs. So please speak into your microphones and make sure your voice projects so the people at home can hear what we are saying. Can I move on to item number 4, which is A and B, the approval of the minutes from the work session and the regular session on June 11th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve items 4A and B. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No opposition. Motion carries. Moving on to item 5, which is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous motion carries. Moving on to item number 6 tonight, which is licenses. And this is a resolution granting a victualling license and holiday sales to Baked Kingston, Rhode Island Operators LLC, which are doing business as Insomnia Cookies, located on Fortin Road in Kingston, subject to the approval by the Kingstown Fire Chief. An application is submitted by Seth Berkowitz. Is Seth or somebody here to speak on behalf? Please come to the podium and state your name and tell us a little bit about what you're going to do.
My name is Brian Baker. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Insomnia Cookies. Insomnia Cookies is a business that's been operating for about 15 years, started by our college student and still owner, Seth Berkowitz, when he was a student at the University of Pennsylvania. He saw a need for, on college campuses, something more than greasy, heavy food. So he had a sweet tooth late at night, and he would bake cookies, and people started bugging him to do it, and he was a business major and saw an opportunity. And 15 years later, we have 134 stores around the country, over 3,000 people in our company, and we're very much a growing business, expanding to the West Coast and continuing on the East Coast where we're originally from. So we serve a variety of warm cookies, ice cream, and milk delivered to your door, as well as retail. So,
Oh, that's impressive. Very impressive.
How far do you guys deliver?
I'm sorry? Usually 3 miles, but definitely focused on the college campus.
Sounds amazing.
Now, are your hours, what are your typical hours and what days of the week do you operate?
We operate 7 days a week. We're closed on typically Thanksgiving and Christmas, Christmas Eve. We generally open up between 9 and 10 a.m., and we deliver late till 3 in the morning because, let's face it, college students are up late. So.
Are you going to stay open for the summer even when college is out of session?
Yes, all of our locations, we don't shut them down for non-peak, as we call it. So.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve item 6A.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Continued luck.
Best of luck to you.
Appreciate it.
Moving on to item number 7. This is a public hearing. So the first of a public hearing, and this is to consider the proposed amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 9, Licenses and Miscellaneous Business Regulations, relative to the plastic bag reduction as shown on Exhibit 1 in the agendas that you all have. So now is the time to proceed. I guess we could ask questions here at the council, but now is the public's time to come up if you'd like to speak on this as well, unless anybody has anything to say.
I have some questions about some of the ordinance. So in section 9182, item F, reusable bags with handles that are stitched and not heat fused, and I wondered why that was added in.
So this is actually language that has been part of the ordinance, the model ordinance, if you will, that's been adopted in other communities in Rhode Island. This is particularly the Aquidneck model, if you will. What they were trying to do is there are plastic bags that are sort of a heavier gauge plastic that come with handles that are cutouts. And the proponents of the ordinance didn't want that to become the standard because all it is a little bit heavier. It isn't truly a reusable bag in the sense that they meant. It's a heavier disposable bag is what they maintained.
Great. Okay, I didn't realize that. My thought was a reusable bag is a reusable bag, but I kind of get it. In 9-184, packages of multiple bags intended for use as containers for garbage, pet waste, or yard waste. Would it make sense to add there as an exemption food bags, sandwich bags, freezer bags, that kind of stuff, as an exemption? It sort of indicates that that's what we're talking about here, boxes of garbage bags.
Right. It clearly is not the intention of this ordinance to ban Ziploc bags.
Okay.
That's not contemplated. It's not what was drafted into it. It seems to me, and I'm not altogether certain where in the ordinance, but there was that intent to exclude sandwich bags
Right.
and bags you buy in the grocery store to use.
And I know that our
elsewhere.
intent is not to go out and fine people for buying a box of bags.
Right.
I get that. So I've got just a couple of more. So 9185B, the fine is at $250 for the second assessment or the second violation. And so I did a little research on the rest in Rhode Island, and nobody for the first offense was over $150. And I thought we should, frankly, I don't think there's going to be a lot of enforcement that needs to be done, but I didn't think that the fine should be more here than...
Well, there's a warning first, right?
Right, the first, all the communities give a notice first, right? And then the second offense has a fine of $150 in the 4 other communities that I was able to find. But every community gives a notice first. So I would entertain that when we get to that part that we reduce that to $150. And then in C and D, in both cases, in B, the ordinance says that the fine shall be assessed, and in B and C, the word is may be assessed for the third violation, and then D says that the town council may revoke any municipally issued license. If B says shall, shouldn't all 3 say shall?
It's really a question for the council. I think the idea, built into this is that as the penalties become stiffer, greater discretion to accommodate problems that nobody anticipated is afforded the enforcement officers. I think that's the rationale.
You know, and I can accept that. That's a good explanation. And then the last comment I'll have is that enforcement in the ordinance says will be handled, I think, primarily through the police department and the town manager's office. Are we driving ourselves toward a municipal court here? With more and more of this kind of stuff.
I will tell you I've started looking into whether or not a municipal court makes sense for South Kingstown. I have not seen any evidence suggesting that I'm wasting my time in looking into how we might set one up.
I have a question about the ordinance, not municipal court, but the plastic barrier bag, where it talks about in section 9-182, I know it notes here frozen foods, meat, fish, whether prepackaged or not. I'm just thinking about some of our farmers who sell fresh meats from their farm, and I know the Department of Health regulates that there has to be they have to be in a plastic bag. So I just want to make sure that that language is sufficient for them. And would the Department of Health rules trump anything that we have here?
Maybe I can respond. That has come up in other communities, and it has been decided that they are allowed to, for two reasons. Number one, for the rule that you just mentioned, and also most of those farmers are doing it, at a farm stand, and that really doesn't come under the definition of the retail establishment.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions here at the audience? Comments? Any?
I'm sorry.
Oh, somebody's coming up. Please state your name for the record.
Sure. My name's Dave McLaughlin. I live at 3 Haskell Avenue, Newport, Rhode Island. I just wanted to, first by saying thank you to South Kingston for moving forward with this ordinance. This is really the first step of environmental stewardship and sustainability. The meeting that you had here a few weeks ago was fantastic, bringing together so many different people to talk about the topic. I wanted to just address a couple issues, questions, and I would certainly come back up. In terms of some of the businesses that are exempt with the ordinance that's stated as nonprofit organizations, so most of your farms will fall into that category. The city of Newport actually does have, I would say, the most stringent fineage. They actually charge up to $1,000 on the first offense, but that also has a conditional clause that it's up to them to make that decision. And to echo the points that the town manager made about the definition of a reusable bag, it's really the spirit of the manufacturing of the bag that the inclusion of a stitched handle is really what promotes the durable, reusable nature of the material. So thanks again for going forward with this. I won't take any credit for being here. It's really the Girl Scouts that are leading the charge, so thank you again.
I have two Girl Scouts that I see who just keep raising their hand. Do you girls want to come up to the podium and state your name? And if you need to change the position of the microphone so we can hear you, please do so.
My name is Ebby Demos. My name is Sage Wallace. We just have two questions. My question is, if you decide to ban the plastics, what if other people in the community want to go against the ban? What would happen?
You mean after we pass it, or? They would have to be people who own these retail establishments, and if they were opposed to it, then they would, suffer the consequences of the penalties, which are sort of outlined in there, $250 for the first offense at this point. So that's going to be up to our police department and town manager to enforce. So. I think most of the retailers in the community, however, have expressed a lot of support for the idea. So I want to thank you for generating that support.
And once we vote, and if it is passed, Mr. Collins is right. If people don't obey the ordinance, then they will be penalized.
How are you going to totally eliminate the plastic bags?
That's a question for a lot of people. We can only start with what we're trying to change through the great effort of you guys, which have brought that great video to us that we saw, that opened up our eyes to what plastic can do to the detriment of our community, to our wildlife, and to our oceans. And this is the place to start. We can't totally eliminate plastic bags, but this point, we can start to make a change in the process. And thank you for guiding us and presenting what you did to us, because it was very eye-opening. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to come up and speak? Do we have any more questions here? Oh, Brenda, please come forward.
Thank you. I'd like to encourage the town council to pass this ordinance. I think it's a really important first step for a much larger problem, but that's how this journey has to begin, I think, with the first step. And thank you for the opportunity to present evidence at the workshop session.
Thank you, Brenda, and I know we did it that night, but please extend another thanks from the council to the students that were so involved. It was incredible. They did a phenomenal job.
My name is Christine Mueller from Kingston. I'm very happy that you're considering a plastic bag ban. Thank you very much. I just have a question. What's about the paper bags? We know that paper bags, of course, also take a lot of resources to produce. Would it be possible to have a fee on paper bags? Because the whole purpose is to get away from throwaway bags and, encourage people to bring their own shopping bags with them.
I don't know at this point if this could be proposed in the ordinance. Maybe I could get more clarification. This specific ordinance and public hearing was based on plastic, so I don't know if paper can be included in this public hearing, but I'm not sure.
I think we have to do it in steps because, you're going to eliminate plastic bags, and if you eliminate paper bags at the same time, that's quite the shock to the system.
I do think that if you were to, some amendments you can make tonight without offending the sort of public notice that's gone on. I think if you were to change this to include paper, you'd be beyond the public notice that's been provided.
And I certainly at that point would like to give the opportunity to the retail stores who want to buy into this to have time to acclimate themselves to certainly making changes. Please come up.
Hi, David Flanders with Conservation Commission. The ordinance here is not necessarily that to extend into getting into paper bags at all. It's basically to make people aware that we are trying to get away from dealing with plastic. I mean, we have Block Island that has done away with plastic straws, balloons. I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can go forward from this basic ordinance. And paper is just going to be an intermediary thing. We want to get people into the habit of just having in your car your own reusable, as Dave said, stitched handled bags. So it's an intermediary thing. We're not shifting this over to paper bags and what is that ecological effect. It's to change our behavior. Just make us conscious of what we've been doing and how we can do it better.
Thank you.
I would caution that we shouldn't tackle paper bags tonight. I think it is something to look at in the future. I do think also that there are plans underway to have a whole marketing blitz around SK branded reusable bags. So there's going to be efforts made to encourage the use of reusable bags, and hopefully that'll move people away from the choice of paper.
I was in Cambridge for 3 weeks where they have a plastic bag ban, and everywhere I went, if you didn't have your own bag, they were offering boxes. They had very inexpensive reusable bags, and it really wasn't a shift to paper. It was more of a, you got to find something or shove that in your backpack. So I don't see this ordinance shifting people to plastic so much as saying you've got to start bringing your own bags. And I think that media blitz will be really important, and the partnership we're forming with the chamber on that will be critical to getting this successful.
there will need to be an educational component that follows this.
Do we have any more discussion on the floor? Please come forward and state your name.
Hi, I'm Jason Black, and I just wanted to talk about, you all mentioned reusable bags, reusable plastic bags. There are biodegradable choices, biodegradable plastics already. I know at the school I went to, we used compost and biodegradable cups. So I'm just curious if we have any plans in the town to expand maybe the compost center at Rose Hill. If they would take more compost, we need a depot for that kind of thing in the town to go hand in hand with the ordinance.
Again, I think baby steps are what we're taking at this point. I'm not saying it's not out of the realm. It would be a wonderful thing. I don't know if we have any projection or thoughts on researching that, but certainly your point is well taken.
I know off the top of my head, Earth Choice is a big company in New England.
I don't know if you noticed Mr. Flanders behind you on the Conservation Commission, but maybe you guys could connect and talk about those initiatives, because I'm sure they would welcome those kinds of ideas.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of momentum behind this, so I think you'll find a lot of interested people.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other, okay.
Hi, Sarah Isabella. I'm a resident of Wakefield. And when you brought up educational component, is there a town-directed educational component on this and getting people to use reusable and not just, like you said, paper bags, switching to paper bags? Because I've asked a lot of the retailers, like especially Stop and Shop, and people really plan to switch to paper, and that's really not the point. So I'm just wondering if the town does have an educational component with the schools, or I haven't been following it closely, but...
We've talked about allocating funds to help the chamber as well and educate the community, and we're definitely going to put a component of education into it because it's going to be a mindset change for people. There are plenty of times where I end up at the store and I forgot my bags, and then I have to buy more bags, which is fine, but it's that panic when you look in your back of your car and they're not there.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
And as Liz alluded to, there is sort of this partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and I think you'll see some positive come out of that. Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Any other feedback?
Just as a takeoff on the last speaker, I would be more than willing to tackle an educational component to this at the middle school, and I could probably easily sway some of my colleagues at the high school to do the same in terms of this whole sustainability with like lunch programs and recycling, full bore at the schools.
Well, that would be great, because we did have somebody come in to speak about the schools and use of styrofoam and things of that nature, so that would be awesome. So that probably, Rob, if you could take maybe note of that, and that's something that we could talk about and call upon Brenda's expertise. Thanks, Brenda. Anything else? Oh. Come on up, girls.
We'd like to encourage the plastic. We'd like to encourage the plastic bag ban. It is hurting our environment, and it is hurting us.
Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any more comments? Anything else here at the table?
I'll just say, in regard to the $250 initial figure that I sort of suggested at the last work session, it's a little higher than the other communities, but I also wanted to be lenient in terms of the amount of time that we gave to the establishment, so I suggested the 28-day time frame instead of the 2-week time frame, which I think allows the businesses more time to make that switch after they've been given the notice of violation. So I thought we could be lenient there and then have the higher fine.
And so my impression is that there's not going to be a big enforcement or a violation issue going forward, so it's certainly not a deal breaker for me. But I was really pleased when the EDC reached out to the business community, and they got pretty much full support from the business community. Again, I don't think it'll be a big problem with the violations, but I guess I just don't want to be the highest fine.
You could always go down the middle. Go ahead.
Again, I worked with was privileged to be invited to work with the subcommittee for the EDC on the survey, and the final results were 78% of the businesses, and this included 1 national chain, 3 New England chains, plus small business, medium, and large businesses within town. 78% were in favor of doing away with this, and one of them, who I interviewed, deals with 1,600 bags a week. He says, I'm happy to let that go. It's all the better. And there was also an online survey by one of our local newspapers, The Independent, that produced the identical figure of 78% people wanting to do that. Dave McLaughlin from Clean Ocean Access spoke at the May 31st meeting, and he mentioned that at Aquidneck, compliance isn't really an issue. I mean, 99%, he said, of businesses were compliant. And if they weren't, it was because they were just misinformed or whatever. I don't think that is really an issue, and I don't think we spent a lot of time on that. It seemed to be not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Brian Gajelski. If passed, when is it supposed to go into effect?
January 1st of 2019.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So do we want to sort of take a roll of the fine? I mean, I would be in favor of the 150. That's in line with other communities. Again, not a deal breaker. So, any other feelings on the?
I think the only thing with that for me would be, I guess, some of the larger stores that wouldn't be that big of a fine for them potentially. But at the same time, I agree that I think 99% of folks are going to comply.
Anything else? Anything else here at the table? I have a motion then to close the public. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Matt Bradywood. I think regarding this debate, whether it's 150 or 250, all of these would be following an initial warning. Is that correct? So I'm of the opinion that it should be 1,000 or 2,000. You've been warned, and especially if it's 4 weeks instead of 2, I think that's ample time to correct it, and I think it shows that you're serious about enforcing the rule. As I said, I don't think that Shaw's is going to be just flippantly paying $150 fines and fine with it, but make it sound serious.
I'm a little more concerned about the small retailer on Main Street, but
with 4 weeks of lead time, I think that's appropriate. So.
And I think also if you currently have stock of plastic bags, hopefully the 6 months will give you time to get rid of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The hearing is now closed. Motion.
I will make a motion to approve item 7A as presented.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions, recusals? Seeing none, motion carries. A plastic ban will be in effect as of January 1st. Thank you for all that you've done to bring this to the attention.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good start, as we say.
It is a good start.
Gotta start somewhere.
Let's move on to item 7B, which is a second public hearing. This is to consider the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, Article 3, use regulations, Article 4, dimensional regulations, and Appendix A, a use code descriptions relative to multi-household land development projects, as shown on Exhibit 2. Chelsea?
Hello. Let me just connect quickly. Good evening. I am Chelsea Seaford. I'm the town's Director of Planning. This public hearing is being held to consider potential amendments to the town's zoning ordinance relative to multi-household land development projects. One of the roles of the Planning Board and the Planning Department is to assess how the town's development regulations match the policy that has been established, both within the town council's goals and objectives and the South Kingstown Comprehensive Community Plan. As we constantly use the regulations, we analyze whether the rules that are in place will help the town achieve its vision and then propose amendments to sort of help us get to where we want to be. The housing section of the town council's goals and objectives sets forth a vision for the town's housing future that sets a desire to promote an enhanced sense of place, to continue the town's traditional development pattern, to include a wide range of housing options, and to allow multifamily residential development in the town's village areas where appropriate. The town's comprehensive community plan sets forth a similar vision, calling for a range of housing options for diverse population, retaining diversity, focusing on infill development in the village areas, and providing attractive multifamily housing options. While housing policy sets a vision for the community's future growth, the vision must be translated into appropriate regulations in order to become reality. One of the ways in which the town regulates density is by regulating the number of units that are allowed on a single parcel. This is called regulating housing type, and in South Kingstown there are 3 types. Single family, which is considered 1 unit on a parcel, a duplex, which is 2 full-sized units connected, and multi-household development, which is basically anything other than a single family or a duplex. In South Kingstown, single-family homes are permitted in all residential zoning districts, duplexes in fewer districts, and then multi-household development in still fewer. In South Kingstown, multi-household development is classified into 2 types: structures, which are single buildings with up to 12 units, and projects, which is everything else. Projects and structures are then further classified into elderly only, which is for 55 plus residents, and those that are not age restricted. Upon review of the zoning ordinance, it came to our attention that elderly only multi-household developments are allowed in more districts than those that are not age restricted. Elderly only structures and projects are allowed in our most dense residential districts, which is R10 and RM, and then also our mixed-use commercial neighborhood and commercial downtown districts. However, such structures and projects that are not age-restricted are not allowed in the R10 zone, and projects that are not age-restricted are also not allowed in the CN or the CD zones. The only factor determining where these structures and projects are allowed or not allowed is who is intended to occupy the development, not the density or the proposed form of the development. In practice, this distinction seems unnecessary, especially given the housing vision that the town has set forth. There's a call for more multi-household development, more density in the village areas, and for retaining diversity. Limiting multi-household development that is not age-restricted, where age-restricted development is otherwise allowed, seems to fly in the face of this vision. To rectify this problem, the proposed amendments eliminate the elderly-only type of multi-household development. Developers will still have the option to limit the age of occupants, should they so choose, but the distinction will not be contained within the zoning ordinance. With elderly-only development types removed, it is then proposed to allow multi-household development in all of the zoning districts where elderly-only has previously been permitted. In addition to rules related to where structures and projects are allowed, we've noticed some discrepancies relative to the dimensional regulations for multi-household development. First, though age-restricted projects have always been allowed in the CN and CD districts, the zoning ordinance's dimensional regulations were silent on minimum lot size, frontage, and setbacks. The proposed amendments fix this problem simply by changing the words in the dimensional table to specifically reference the use codes. Also, it came to our attention that though multi-household projects are allowed in the R10 zoning district, the dimensional regulations applied to such projects basically preclude them from ever being constructed. As you will recall, the town's housing vision calls for development within the existing village areas. Outside of the commercial districts, these are primarily zoned R10, which is the town's densest residential district. The proposed amendments seek to change the dimensional regulations for multi-household projects within the R10 district to allow such projects to occur. Where a minimum lot size of 80,000 square feet was previously necessary, the draft amendments require 15,000 square feet for the first 2 units, plus 5,000 square feet for each additional unit. This is the same minimum lot area calculation currently applied to multi-household structures in this district. To provide some context, most of the lots in the R10 district are between 6,000 square feet and 15,000 square feet, meaning that even when you compile multiple lots together, it would still be difficult to get to that 80,000 square foot minimum size. Also, the zoning ordinance currently requires a front setback of 100 feet for multi-household projects. Given the size of the lots in the R10 district, in many cases a 100-foot front setback would preclude the lot from multi-household development. The proposed draft changes this to 25 feet, which more closely matches the character of the R10 district, given that all other uses in the district require only a 25-foot setback. Similarly, the zoning ordinance currently requires a 60-foot side and rear setback for multi-household projects. The proposed amendments reduce the setbacks to a more reasonable requirement that matches the existing character and setback requirements for other uses within the district. Finally, the zoning ordinance currently requires a 100-foot buffer on all sides where a multi-household development is proposed to adjoin a residential property. With this standard, were a multi-household development to be situated where a residential property lies on all sides, the ability to develop the property would be severely limited. Such a development would need a minimum width of 200 feet just for the buffer, not including the space the structure would occupy. As currently enacted, the zoning ordinance provides screening options for situations where industrial or commercial property abuts residential. Those options include a 50-foot wooded buffer, a 20-foot partial landscape screen, or a 10-foot full landscape screen. It seemed upon review that the buffer requirements appropriate for industrial abutting residential should also be appropriate for multi-household abutting a different type of residential, and the proposed amendments allow multi-household development to use those buffers. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
My only suggestion is if we could put that on ClerkBase, that presentation. Very thorough memorandum in here, but maybe if anybody from the public wants to reference that, that'd be great.
Does anybody from the public want to come up to speak before we take more questions from the council?
Chelsea, I have one question. Surprise.
Yes.
In section 402, revised section number 4 is no dwelling units shall be allowed on the first floor.
Yeah, that's in there currently. That's not an addition. That is the current regulation in the CD district.
Oh, okay, so it's not.
That's mixed use? Is that what?
That's the CD district is your Main Street in Peacedale. It's in there now. We're not proposing it, although there has been some sort of pushback on that over, I don't know, the past 18 months where people are saying, well, what if retail doesn't make sense on the first floor? What else can I do? But that we didn't try to address that. The other thing I should mention, and I put it in your memo but didn't cover it here, is that, as you all will recall, we have a proposal out right now to hire someone to look at the zoning ordinance and produce technical recommendations relative to multi-household development. So we see this sort of as a stopgap. We're just fixing a known problem trying to make it fit more with the character of the districts, and hopefully a lot more will come out of that process when it's done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some notes here, if you wouldn't mind, on this proposal. There will be potentially some units, a lot of units actually, with the change, because the setback requirements are going to change dramatically. Have you had discussions with developers about the build-out on how close they want to be and how much they want to build on these properties? And then my second question is, with these proposed changes, Chelsea, will they be going to the planning board for review and approval, no matter the number of units? So they are advertised, and each and every one of the abutters on the property have notification so that when this comes up, because this will be a big change. So I'm not against it, because we need more affordable housing, we need to change our housing, but there's still some questions that have to be answered. I have a few more notes, but
yeah. So to start with those, I have had discussions with several developers who have either purchased or are looking at lots in town, in Wakefield or Peacedale, where they want to put more than one unit on a lot and just are not able to. You know, the lot sizes are so small that they can't meet the 100-foot buffer, they can't meet the 60-foot setback, and still get more than one unit. So there is concern out there about, you know, making this happen, and if you know, their feedback to us has been, well, if the town is really serious about infill, then you need to make it possible for us to do infill. To the second point, yes, all multi-household developments are run through the planning board. Now, they're currently fall into the minor versus major distinction, which is the same as subdivision. So if you create 5 or less units, you are a minor land development project. 6 or more, you're a major. A minor land development project does not have a public hearing requirement. It would go through a planning board meeting, but no direct notice, only the major would. That's
they
the
would
current
not have to.
for the minor, for anything 5 or less units.
And as
that's
far
the
as
current.
single family, the setback requirement will be, because I might have misunderstood you, setback requirement would be 10 to 20 feet? If
On the sides, you mean?
Yes, because Narragansett, I know, does not allow that, because I know they don't.
So right now, for the multi-household projects that abut residential, the minimum setback on both sides is 100 feet. What's being proposed is a minimum side setback, and let me go back. Let me see if I can do that here. You'll see it here on the third row of the table. The minimum side setback is 10 feet, but if it's 10 feet, it has to be a full landscape screen. And the way the regulations define that is either a fence and some landscaping, or a fully impenetrable vegetative screen in that 10 feet. If they don't want to do all that landscape or put up the fence, they could go with a 20-foot partial screen or a 50-foot buffer. So it gives them some options. Now that's the same buffer that is required by the zoning ordinance currently when an industrial property abuts a residential. And so if you think about sort of incompatible uses, that's the standard the zoning ordinance sets currently for, like, out in West Kingston where, our industrial abuts residential.
Do you think this would open us up to much more density within the town?
I think you will get an increase in density in the village centers, because it's specifically targeted at the R10, which is currently our densest area.
So I think then you might have answered this, but with this change, do you think, these are all my notes, will there be any type of a multi-household land development project that are, I think you answered this, strictly approved administratively?
There will be none that are approved administratively without planning board review.
About technical review committee?
No, it would still go to the planning board. Everything would go to the planning board. Sometimes, if the technical review committee finds no technical issues, it'll go to the planning board's consent agenda, but the planning board can always pull it off if they have inquiries from the public.
At what instance then would the planning board decide to advertise or not advertise?
The planning board is required to advertise for public hearing if it's 6 units or more. 5 units or less are defined by state law as a minor. We're a little bit tied here because the state subdivision and land development ordinance, the Enabling Act, requires us to have certain review procedures. And we can't differentiate from those except to sort of go over and above. I mean, if we wanted to put in our regulations that these things would require a public hearing, we could, but we'd have to make that amendment as well.
I just have a lot more questions. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just saying that.
Happy to answer them.
Any more questions here at the table?
I think I would just add that, the planning board and in the new comprehensive plan draft and, overall my working with them has adamantly said we want to encourage development in the village centers. That is limited currently because our village centers are developed. There's not much else you can do there except increase density. And so we see this as a way to meet that goal of developing in the village centers while also keeping the areas outside the village centers at a lower density.
Is this something that the planning board, through all of the members on the planning board, are all in favor of and have asked you to bring forward tonight?
They recommended it unanimously at their last meeting.
Is there a communication from the planning board that we should evidence?
It should have been attached to my memo, which you have.
Just wanted to make sure that we...
Yeah, I'm going to ask Susan to read into the record the date of the planning board recommendation and that it is a positive recommendation.
The planning board, in a letter dated May 23rd, reports that on Tuesday, May 22nd, they voted as follows: to hereby recommend that the town council enact revisions to the South Kingstown zoning ordinance as detailed in the Exhibit 1 on the agenda. The proposed amendments are intended to eliminate the distinction between elderly-only multi-household land development projects and multi-household land development projects that are not age-restricted, and to amend the dimensional regulations for such projects to reflect the characteristics of the permitted zoning districts. They then list their findings of fact relating to consistency with the comprehensive community plan and the purposes of zoning, which they ask be incorporated into your decision this evening.
Thank you. I could just add one additional thing. So as I said in the presentation, right now there's two types of multi-household. There's structures and projects. Structures are a single building with up to 12 units in it. Projects are basically anything else. So that could be 3 individual homes on one property, or 2 buildings that each have three houses, or 2 buildings that each have 2 houses, or 2 units. Right now, structures, which is the up to 12, have all of the same buffers and setbacks that we're now proposing for projects. So it's not necessarily that we're allowing more density on a parcel, it's allowing more diversity in how that density is provided. So you don't have to do an apartment building with 12 units, you could do 12 smaller footprint houses, which is sometimes called like cottage zoning. So there's a mechanism now that if really, a developer wanted to max out density on a property, they could do an apartment building with 12 units. This gives them some more flexibility as to how it's designed so that the form of the development matches the community a little bit better.
I guess my only concern is the setback regulations. I think they're relatively close in terms of 10 feet, even with a buffer. Shame on me. I wish I had some more information. I don't at this point, so that was the reason for my questions.
And I think the planning board, when looking at that, basically said, if it's good enough for industrial versus residential, and we're saying a 10-foot full landscape screen is, that's what the zoning ordinance establishes, then it shouldn't necessarily be a more rigorous buffer requirement for residential, abutting residential, just because it's a different form. And I think that's where they came down on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions with the audience? Or please come up.
I just have a little concern. What is this going to be like in the end? I went by in North Kingstown. I've been around for 81 years in the state of Rhode Island. And I tell you, what I see up there is an invasion of multifamily. There's three, every time I go by there, there's more houses built. Now, what in our neighborhoods, didn't we have to have so many acres to build a home? And right around my area, and it is in South Kingstown, right adjacent to St. James Church, seems like there's about 10 houses on 5 acres of land. Am I wrong, or I don't understand why all of a sudden we need to build 3 times what we need down here. Can someone answer that? What is going to be after all these regulations, I guess, is my question.
I don't think this changes the regulation on how many square feet you're required in R10 to build a house. I think it's still 10,000 square feet to build a single-family dwelling, so that's not going to change. So to answer your question for, how many houses have to be on an acre, it's 10,000 square feet for one house.
Just one, but she was just saying 3 types, single, double, and triple, or quadruple, or whatever. That's what I'm seeing up in North Kingstown, right near the Newport Creamery, because I love the Newport Creamery, and I go there. But when I came by from on 403, and I looked up on the big hill, I said, well, and the next day, the next week, I saw all these houses, so I just take it that it's going to be like that down here. Is this coming? Do we have so many people that want to come down and live down here?
Can I just clarify, Martha, are you talking about individual single-family homes? That is what you're seeing in North Kingstown?
Go to the Newport Creamery and then go north and look to your left.
Right.
I tell you, they're like motels up on the hill, way up on the hill. They look beautiful.
Arthur, I know, my office is right across the street. I see it every day. I know exactly what you're saying.
You know what I'm talking about then. Well, how many people are going to live up there in those monstrosities?
And that's been a point of contention in North Kingstown. Their town council meetings have been dominated by discussion over that.
I fear that here. So just keep watch, folks, because I don't trust things. You all know that.
We love you, Mother.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
My name's Tia Beckman. I came for something else, but looking at the side setbacks, 10 feet, where does the driveway go in? To go in, where do you park? Do you look at that in the planning? Do you?
The planning board would have that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm thinking of.
I don't think the 10-foot setback can include cars. Is that right?
So a side setback can include a driveway.
Can or cannot?
It can, yes. Let's say it was a single-family home in the R10. When you come in for your soil erosion sediment control permit or your building permit, you would show a site plan, and it shows basically where your driveway is going to go. You might need a physical alteration permit, and there's a whole slew of things that would tell you where that driveway goes. For multi-household land development projects, which is what we're talking about today, the planning board reviews everything. They review where the parking goes, where the dumpster goes, where the vegetation is, how the stormwater is handled. All of that goes through the land development project process. So the parking, at the end of the day, it might not be a 10-foot setback because they need to get a drive aisle in the back to service the parking. But all of that is reviewed by the planning board according to the regulations.
And Chelsea, what Ms. Stamp was referring to, that massive project that's in North Kingstown, that would be a major land development project, right?
Yeah, so that's, I think what she's referring to is Reynolds Farm, which is a very large subdivision. I would not call that a multi-household land development project. That is where you're subdividing property with separate lots, single families, maybe plus an accessory apartment on each lot. And I don't know enough about North Kingstown zoning to know how that happened, but that could happen in South Kingstown if you have the right acreage. So every zoning ordinance, every zoning district has a minimum lot size. We have our 80, 40, 20, 30, 20, 10. So in any of those districts, you can put as many single-family houses as you can divide your land up into those sizes. So that can happen by right currently now throughout town.
This
does not change any of that. This is specific to more than 2 units on a single property.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else would like to come up to the podium to speak?
My name is Richard Pike, and I didn't come here tonight to talk on this either, but is the purpose of this to create more affordable housing units in the town? Is that what we're trying to accomplish?
I would say based on, this is only my own assertion, but based on some of what Chelsea said, it could potentially bring more affordable housing into the town. Am I wrong, Chelsea?
Maybe I should just stay here. So
what Chelsea?
I think there's 2 kinds of affordable housing that we need to be concerned about in South Kingstown. Some people call them big A affordable and little a affordable. Big A affordable is a deed-restricted unit for a lower moderate income family. Little a affordable is generally affordable to the working population. The idea is, well, in South Kingstown, we have something called inclusionary zoning. So if you have a project that has 6 or more units, you have to deed restrict 20% of those units as lower moderate income. So if you allow more of those, you may get more deed restricted units. The other part of this to consider is that, basically housing supply and demand. If you increase the number of housing units available, the price of those units theoretically would go down. And so you do increase general affordability by increasing density in the village center.
Well, I'm all for affordable units. I think it's a crying shame that many of the people who work in this town can't afford to live in this town. And they're coming in from Woonsocket, West Warwick, Coventry, places that they can afford an apartment. They can't afford one here. And we have practiced, and this is my opinion only, and I've been around a long time, exclusionary zoning in this community. And we've, by design, have tried to keep it rural and open space, but by doing that, we've also driven the price of housing up to where it's unaffordable to a person who works making even $15 or $20 an hour. It's very difficult to afford an apartment. I think probably the least expensive one, and Brian probably knows more about this than I do, you're looking at $1,400 or $1,500 a month for an apartment. And many people can't afford that. I mean, McDonald's, they bus their people in from the city. I mean, they don't have a private bus, but the bus comes down in the morning and all their workers get off. And when they get off their shift, they get back on the bus and go back to the city. I think this town could be a healthier town if we had a place for a more diverse population of income levels. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean Kruger. I have a question about the accessory building setbacks for the side and rear lots, and they're set at 10 here, they're down from 40. And I was wondering why there weren't 6 to go along with the R10, but this is 1,500, so this is even a little bit larger than the minimum there. So I think I'm just interested in the thought process behind the 10 versus the 6, which is the current R10.
Are you referring to accessories?
The accessories, yeah. Yep.
That's okay. We drafted the amendments to match what was currently required for the structures, not the projects. So the structures have all of this already. We're just making the projects match the structures, and the structures had 10, so we just carried it over. And that's the simple answer. We did not assess whether it should be 6 or 10.
So I guess, again, my question, and I might be repetitive with this, with the multifamily, or multi-unit, I'm sorry, not multifamily, multi-household land use, that will not have to go before technical review?
It will.
Or planning and to the abutters?
Everything that the planning board reviews first goes to the technical review committee. The technical review committee gives a recommendation to the planning board. For minor projects, the planning board, well, in all of these projects, the planning board makes the decision. The planning board makes their findings, they go through the whole process, make the decision. For the minor projects, there's no public hearing required, so there would be no notice to a butter. So that's anything 5 units or less. For anything major, it would have a public hearing, which requires notice to the abutters. That's the distinction. Everything is reviewed by both the technical review committee, which is staff plus 1 planning board member, and then also by the planning board.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, please.
Don't sit down, Chelsea.
Now, back in 2002, the state planning decided what parcels are going to be developed and how they're going to be developed. But I've been following this for a long time. And what parcels are being considered? You hit on it. What's your name? I can't see too good.
Oh, Meg Healy.
Mrs. Healy, okay. So I'm just wondering if there's some surprises maybe for landowners or property owners that don't know what's coming. And I have a great concern. You know, I'm 81, by the way. I came also for a different, I had no idea I was going to get up for this today. I am a Rhode Islander all my life, as I told you before. My concern is the old folks like me. And I've been living here in South Kingstown for 40 years, but I came from Cranston. And I tell you what, that's another story. But affordable housing is what I want too. I mean, that development up there near St. James Church has, right now, I think there's 8 houses in a small parcel. I've got a pretty decent house, and now the income in those homes are from $22,000 to $44,000 in order to live there. Well, I'm in that bracket. Why can't I enjoy a little affordability down here? I've been paying taxes, and my folks have been paying taxes all our lives, all over the state. And yet we can't get one bit of help. But you want to bring down more people, give them more benefits, and where are we considered in this whole planning picture? We're not. And it's just not fair, people. And I know some of you know or where I come from. And I just hope that you have some consideration for us. We don't want to move away. We were forced out of our place in Cranston. This goes back 50 years ago. So I am talking from experience, group. And I think that's all I have to say. But I tell you what, after the life I've lived in this state, I don't trust a thing.
I think I just have to say that I think South Kingstown takes pretty great pride in the way it treats its senior population in terms of the services it provides. Also, if we go back to the presentation, this is really making it easier for people who aren't developing elderly, multi-dwelling unit projects to develop. Already, the people who are developing senior multi-dwelling unit projects have more consideration in our zoning. And I also think we offer elderly tax credits. I just think it's a mischaracterization to say that South Kingstown doesn't make a place for senior citizens. I mean, I think you can see it in the fact that our population is growing older rather quickly.
One last thing, Abel. One last thing. My family never wanted to rely on the government. We want to rely on ourselves, but we need a little help once in a while. If I'm living and I'm 81, I have a full-time job, I get a pretty decent salary, and I'm in that bracket of the 44,000. And I have good health care. I'm not on Medicare. My doctors keep telling me that I'm in better shape than they are. But the thing of it, I was brought up on a farm, and I had to eat 3 meals a day. If you didn't eat your meal, you didn't get anything else. You ate your meal. And I just wanted to bring this out so people understand what the old timers went through. Sure, we had people come in to our family that were immigrants, but we took care of them. Now, I was young at that time because I think it was in the 40s, and I was born in 37. So I think that you all, and this is everybody, they should take care of the people that have been here for 3 generations in my family. And I tell you what, it's been hell. But I tell you what, we have a wonderful family, and I'm a great auntie to 3 youngsters. So not everything is bad. It's just that I'm bringing up things that I want the public to understand. And I thank you for not going like this, because I think this is the first time at the South Kingstown Town Council that I haven't been given the time. So thank you. I'm going home with my plastic bag.
Well, Martha, you didn't come to speak what you came here for, so you have to wait. You can't leave.
What's that? What?
You said you came here for something else, so
Yeah,
when
I did. 2 pages. Yeah.
So you can't leave, so you have to sit down and wait for that.
I've worked it all in. I've worked it all in because I want a little affordable housing now. Why can't we make that for seniors up instead of $36,000 for a little break on our taxes? Make it to 44 because it's starting at 22. Just go to the mini super. You can see the thing there for affordable housing living in Charlestown. You can't make any less, I guess, than 22, and you can't make any more than 44. Well, I'm in there, so give me about $2,000 off my taxes, and I will be really happy. And there you have affordable housing for Martha.
I don't know, does the state stipulate the affordable housing guideline, or is that something that's mandated by the town? I go to the mini super almost every day. You're my neighbor.
So just, I think Martha brings up a good point. Our population is changing. Our population is aging. We are expected to have the greatest increases in population in the 55-plus category and in the millennial category. Our middle, some young families, are not growing. There's a demand in town and in southern Rhode Island in general for smaller footprint, multi-family, multi-household development. Seniors want someplace to move to that's more affordable, smaller, where they don't have to take care of the land necessarily. Many of them do. Millennials also are looking for sort of that smaller footprint. Rhode Island Housing put out a study last year that talked about the changing demographics and the demands for a single family versus multifamily. And we are overbuilt on single family. We are quite underbuilt on multi-household. So the planning board and through the comprehensive plan, the planning department, we are constantly trying to reassess how we're meeting our needs. And this is just one of the ways that we think that we can do it better.
Thank you, Chelsea. I guess my only comment, I fit in that 55 plus, so I could be in a senior housing living right now. But a couple of comments that I've had from people reading this, people are concerned, and I'm not saying it's this, I think we need to be very diverse. I think we need to have more affordable housing. I think we need to open up the floodgates a little bit. I'm very concerned because the perception with people is this is going to create sprawl. And that's what I have heard from the public. No, and I'm hoping I can defend the position that I have discussed. But that's where I think before this goes into fruition tonight, I could be wrong, it's a vote, there needs to be more communication to the public. People concerned about the setbacks, 10 feet, 15 feet, 6 feet, whatever it is, depending upon where you want to live. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying that I don't know if I necessarily support it tonight because of the questions that have been brought to me about the potential for this in the community and what the implications can be. That's just my own personal opinion. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm definitely one to advocate for more diverse housing in this community. I just want to really see a good, focused approach. You guys have done a great job, but I don't know if the public is aware of how this is going to roll out. Any more?
In regards to Martha, your comment earlier about generations of family, I think this is important to keep in mind. One of the biggest problems that we have in town is the ability for, say, my kids, when they get to a certain age, to be able to live in town, or kids that are looking for jobs can't afford to live in our town. So we're trying to make that affordable, but at the same time, what's happening is folks are aging in place, so it creates kind of a bottleneck on demand. So if that person that normally would be able to maybe downsize can't afford to downsize, then the cycle of moving up to the next house kind of gets bottlenecked at the top. So with that being said, it's a very complicated thing, and I do agree with you that everyone should have the opportunity for affordable housing in general. When you talk about those units, I think in Charleston, I've seen them. There's quite a few, and I don't even think they have basements. And the problem with stuff like that also is the fact that there could be 100 people that would like that dwelling, but there's only 10 of them as an example. So that creates another issue where it's not really fair, but it becomes more of who puts their application in first for those types of dwellings. Sure.
I could be wrong, but nothing in this.
You bring up a very good point. But you see, my nieces and my great nieces are moving out of here. They got their education. It's all because they can't find 2 of them out of 8 in one family. He had 8 children, and 2 of them are still here, but the rest are scattered across the pond or over in California. They disappear. Don't think for 1 minute that your little guy or your 2 little guys aren't going to leave the state, because unless the state understands the tax structure in this state rots, because we can't keep going. I mean, you got scooping of 9/11. I'm paying 9/11 all the time, and you're scooping the money. Not you, Brian, but you know where I'm coming from. I know too. But I mean, as an oldster, you see, I understand things. Everybody in this room, guaranteed, is younger than I, because every meeting I go to, everyone is younger, even you guys. But the thing of it is, unless something radically changes, your children are not going to stay here. I may only live another few years, but I might not see it, but you will.
Well, Martha, on talk radio, they say you're going to live forever, because I
That's what
listened to
Dan
you.
York said.
I know, I listened to you on talk radio.
He doesn't like me, but I tell you what, sometimes he makes me wait an hour to get on, but I still hold, but I got the key. You say something that he agrees with, and put me on in 15 minutes. There's no fool like an old fool.
Except you just admitted that in the public hearing.
So I want to be perfectly clear here. Currently, in the R10 zoning district, there are 4 types of residential allowed. There's single-family, duplex, multifamily structure, multifamily project, 4 types allowed. All of those types except projects have the setbacks and area requirements you see listed in the middle column there. So if you have a multi-household structure with up to 12 units, you can get as many units on that property as you can fit based on the top calculation. 15,000 square feet for the first 2 units plus 5 for every unit thereafter. So if, let's say, you had a 20,000 square foot property, you could have 3 units, 15 plus 1. That apartment building that would have 3 units, 4 units, 6 units, has the side and rear setbacks that you see on this chart. That is every structure in the R10 currently, and we're only talking about the R10. We're not talking about any other zoning district. R10 and RM, but RM is already, all the RMs are already developed. That's a district you place somewhere if you want more density. So really, the development form that you're going to see in terms of setbacks is not going to change. It's going to be how many units you fit on a property still meeting that form. The form is the same. And that's sort of the purpose of these changes. If you put right now a project on a piece of property and meet the regulation, you would have to set that back 60 feet from the street. In an R10 district, you don't want that. You want that building on the street. You want that street front activated. You don't want to waste that space with nothing. You want it to be close and feel like a neighborhood. Same with the 100 feet on either side. In the R10 district, which is supposed to be our densest, you don't want to waste that space by not filling it with something 100 feet on either side. So now you have the opportunity to go either down to 50 or give it a screening buffer. And I think from the planning board's perspective, developing in the R10, which is our densest, or supposed to be our densest area, is the opposite of sprawl. Sprawl is when you go out in the R80, put 8, 10, 12, 16 houses on a new street. Here you have the infrastructure in place, you have the streets in place, you have sewer, you have water. That's where the development should happen if you don't want to encourage sprawl.
I think this is a great change. I'm going to be happy to vote in favor of this. I do think this is the antithesis of sprawl. This is encouraging infill development. I also want to assuage any issues that you might have with it, Martha. None of this precludes housing for elderly people in our village centers at all. It would only encourage more development for those types of housing. So I think, if our comp plan means anything, if the goals that we've established for ourselves as a council mean anything, then we should all support this.
I agree with you.
Anybody else want to come up to speak before the public hearing is closed, or if there are any other comments here at the table?
Make a motion, we close the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve item 7B as presented.
Abel, can you add to that motion that in support of that motion, you are adopting as your own the findings and recommendations from the plan board as set forth in their correspondence to the council dated May 23rd, specifically with regard to their findings of fact and consistency with the comprehensive plan and with the purposes of zoning?
So moved.
Second that with just a comment. I think this is right in line with our discussions about affordable housing. I know there's been a lot of interest around it in the forums that we've had recently and the discussions in the community. And I think that this is smart development. This is development from within where there's already infrastructure. To me, it just seems like we're coming in line with where we should be and where we are in our comp plan and the goals and objectives we've set. So I think that a lot of work went into this, and I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to supporting this tonight.
We have a motion, and do we have a second?
I seconded it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. With an explanation that I do think that although members are invited to these public hearings and to the planning board meetings, I do think there still is some question within the public that absolutely needs to be clarified. That's my own opinion. I'm not saying that this is a bad idea. I just think that the public needs more information because we've heard feedback on this, and in terms of trying to clarify, I mean, I do think it's a good idea that we have diversity and growth and affordable housing and recommendations to create different types of housing, but I am opposed to this only because I'm not quite sure it's been presented to the best of the public. So I have a nay. So we have a 4-to-1 vote for approve, 1 nay. The motion does carry. Okay, let's move on. Moving on to item 8C, which is a resolution that was adopted June 13th by the Burrillville Town Council in support of Senate Bill 2371, an act relating to education foundation level school support. We have received this, placed on file, and we need to further direct here tonight.
Go ahead.
Motion to place item 8C on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Comment?
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item number 9. Item number 9 on the agenda is comments from interested citizens. Now is the time that we recognize and would like to hear your voice. Please come up to the podium and state your name, and we'd love to hear any comments and questions you have here referencing or of the council.
Well, believe it or not, I've said almost everything but one paragraph I have here. Well, my name, I'll just tell you who my name is now. My name is Martha Stamp, and I'm 81 years old, and I've lived in South Kingstown for about 40 years. And, but I've been a Rhode Island resident for all my life. And I'm still working. But this is the last thing that I will mention today. The issue of, I didn't get an answer as to just where the property is located, where this so-called, because they started out, I told you this before, in 2002 in the planning, in the state planning. And they know what parcels are going to be targeted. And it would be good to know if some of those parcels are in the land trust, because that is another contention I have. When you have too much land in land trusts, there's no taxes coming from that land. And we have an awful lot in trust in South Kingstown. Now, when there's no money generated from tax dollars, my taxes, guaranteed, they're reevaluating my neighborhood, or everybody's neighborhood. They're going to suck me because we've got so much land that is out of the tax base. It's so simple, but a lot of people just don't get that. And like I say, I am ending now. I want to stay in my house the rest of my life. And if I never retire, it's okay, because my one aim is not to depend anyway on the government. And if everybody that wants to retire at 65, 66, or 67 works another 10 or 11 years, they're going to live to be almost 100. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martha. Please come up, just state your name.
My name is Tia Beckman, and I have some pictures. Thank you for listening. I would like the town council to consider a new strategy for identifying old or diseased trees to be cut down. I'm known as a tree hugger, but I also consider safety. They're all different pictures, so you may just want to look at one and pass on. I've had two crises, living in an apartment building across the street from Belmont's. I had matching maple trees, very old, beautiful, beautiful trees. I had crises, and I drive around and I see others coming to happen. I see safety problems for other houses, cars, and people. Presently, I understand that the philosophy is if a tree has a green canopy, it's alive and well, and dead branches can be cut off, and that is the criteria. What I'm suggesting as a layperson is looking at other parts of the tree, considering the age of the tree, and look at the trunk of the tree. From my understanding, a tree, even a big tree, 1.5 to 3 inches on the outside, provides the food back and forth between the leaves and the roots. The interior part of the tree dies back. In a good sturdy tree, it dies back nice and hard. In a fragile tree, it starts rotting. Rot creates from bugs getting in, disease getting in, through cracks, through lack of bark, that kind of thing. Some trees, I understand, that's how they normally age. They start rotting on the inside. So you see a beautiful tree with beautiful canopy, and it's only 1.5 to 3 inches of tree supporting all of those branches. We have very good tree cutters in town, and they do a fabulous job keeping our trees alive, but they're getting old and more susceptible to disease as more branches are cut. Okay, I've made it through page 1. In my situation, I had the 2 matching maple trees. One day I heard bang, bang, bang. Somebody from Belmont's ran across the street, a customer, said the tree is creaking, it's ready to fall. I had to evacuate myself, my son, my cat, and protect my expensive things like the technology. The upstairs lady, 85 years old, had to evacuate for the day. The tree was cut down, we were all safe. But it was creaking loud enough so that people at Belmont's could hear. At that time, I told the tree warden and the state workers that the other tree was a matching tree. When they cut the first tree down, you could see all rot in that 3-inch solid tree. I said, the other one is matching, but it looks even worse because I see rot up there, I see big cutouts in the centers. The colored pictures that you have there are of my house. The branch that fell off goes right across the entryway to my doorway. My son took a break before that branch fell down. 5 minutes. He was in the kitchen. If that branch hadn't gone across my car, look for my car in that branch. You can't see it. It's smushed. My son could have been under that by 5 minutes. There was no wind. There was no rain. I went to Allstate, and they said that a tree had just fallen down on a house a bit earlier. And so now we're talking 2 trees, my car and a house. And I said, something has to change. I did go to the town to ask for a couple of $1,000s for help because I had to rent a car. I'm on limited income. I lived with 50 to 55 degree heat because I'm poor. Thankfully, people lent me cars. Thankfully, I just found money. My father was passing. It was my last couple of months with my dad. I was his driver. I drove him to fun things. I've driven him to school committee meetings. I've driven him to the hospital. He needed to go to the hospital a lot at that time. And so it was a personal story. It's devastating. I don't want anybody else to go through that. The black and white pictures show trees that are on, here I live in town and I can't remember the name of the street. It goes from Belmont's Cherry Lane intersection down by Healy's Market. So you'll see pictures of a couple of trees. Rotten branches, a lot of rot. Old trees, they're not being cut down. How many times do we have to cut more dead branches off and have more dead instead of cutting down a tree and planting a new one so that we have the new growing? There's one tree over by, I'm almost done, one tree by Weed Weavers on Columbia Street that I have a picture there. There's no leaves, there's nothing. It makes a beautiful sign for her. But just a couple of days ago, I was driving down the road and I saw a mailman starting to walk up. He's going to walk under that branch that's going over the sidewalk. When is it going to hit him? When is it going to hit the kids walking to South Kingstown High School? I've spoken to people in the community. They have mentioned they've noticed branches on different roads like Curtis Corner and Ministerial. I talked with one person, she said, I sent letters to the town for years, and they never came and cut the tree until we were having a storm. And I said, mine fell with no wind or anything. I was denied any help because it was an act of God. And I tell you, it's not an act of God. We have more intelligence in understanding the life process of a tree. So I would like you to consider the safety and well-being of the community and think of a new plan for cutting down trees. Thank you.
As we appreciate the comments, certainly, as this is not an agenda item, we can take no action on this tonight.
That's right.
But perhaps we could put it under advisement to the town manager, and if you want to approach, once we maybe do some investigation, it could become an item on an agenda.
You can actually refer it to the town manager and the tree warden. It could be handled administratively, and I'm sure the manager will then report back at some point.
I think that's probably the best way to start at this point, to have some investigative work done and have the town manager do some research with the tree warden, and this is something he could advise the town council. And if it's something that absolutely needs to be put on an agenda based on your concerns, and certainly sounds like other concerns, it will be something that will be addressed.
Okay, so I go speak to you? Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Beckman, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story about your son and your father and what you went through. And I just hope that you know that your reputation precedes you as such an advocate in this community. And I know you come here with the best of intentions, and it's just so thoughtful of you to want us to address this. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story and let you know how much it means to us.
Thank you.
I have to tell you, I have the picture that says about the car, and I can't find your car. Thank you so much. Anybody else like to come up to speak before the council? Please do so and state your name. Anybody here? The only thing I would like to say is we had we're so lucky in this town. We truthfully are in so very many ways, but we spent a lengthy amount of time yesterday over at St. Francis Church for an Eagle Scout presentation for 10 young men in the community. I've been going to them since 2012. What they do to improve this town, to gain the acclamation of earning their Eagle Scout badge, is no less than a thankful effort for the people of this town to recognize their contribution, because they are the next generation. I felt very blessed to be able to be there yesterday. I felt very honored to be able to speak, to represent the town, and to have the council members there along with me, to hear the stories and to praise these youngsters, our next generation. I just wanted to share that because I thought it was just awesome yesterday. I thought it was very awesome. So that's only my 2 cents. But anybody else? Seeing none, let's move on to the town manager's report.
All right. All in all, a pretty good week. Some red on the flag report this week, but it's largely in the staffing category, which we have come to expect in summer in particular. The 2 budget items that we have in red are also associated with staffing issues. The one in administrative services is a note indicating that the contracts that we're negotiating are coming in above the 2% inflationary adjustment that we anticipated when the budget was prepared last fall and adopted this early spring. So we are looking at having to go back and rethink about the spend plan with regard to staffing. The red in admin services is still largely about dealing with some of the disruptive behaviors that we've seen around town hall in the last few weeks. We're feeling better that we've got a handle on how to deal with that, and feeling much more comfortable that that's not going to be a lasting issue. I put a little note up there indicating that trash cans in customer satisfaction is still a live issue, but it seems to be moving in the right direction. The Chamber of Commerce notified me last week that they have entered into an agreement with the kids who are working a summer trade program, and they're going to build trash cans that can be put out on Main Street. So we may see wooden trash cans or plastic lumber trash cans down there sometime relatively soon. Coming over to EMS and the red in tools and equipment, we did have an incident last week where the garage doors down at the Route 1 facility were damaged. The door wasn't completely up when the ambulance went out, and that did cause us some disruption in service down there because the door is now not operating, and we're going to have to go through the expense of having it fixed. We have got a new protocol in place to make sure that the door is either 100% up or 100% down, but it has been an inconvenience this past week. In the greens that are of note, we had a couple of really wonderful stories over the past week. One with the building and zoning enforcement officer himself, who's here. In fact, Wayne, why don't you stand up? I don't think we've actually ever introduced you to the council. This is Wayne Pimentel, our new building official and zoning enforcement officer. And Wayne, I'm going to embarrass him. I didn't tell him I was going to do this, and I didn't mean to do this. But Wayne just got one of the most incredible handwritten notes this past week. It was just a wonderful, it's the kind of note that makes you want to work for government. It's the kind of thing you go into government work to see. But Wayne was dealing with a very, very difficult situation involving a family, an elderly woman, and just some housing code violations that really needed to be taken care of. And he handled it with tremendous finesse and tremendous sympathy, and got a wonderful letter in response to that whole effort from one of the family members. And just an awesome letter, and I'll make sure that members of the council who want to see it get a chance to see that. Meanwhile, we had the same sort of thing happening over in public services this week. John likes to say he's always red because everybody's always complaining about potholes. But this week he had a note from a citizen who started off complaining about potholes and said, "When are you going to fix the potholes in my neighborhood?" And John fired off a note saying, "Well, next week." And in fact, they're repaving the road that was of concern, and John was right there with the perfect answer for a gentleman who recognized that his road needed a great deal of work and now knows it's going to be done. Other than that, really, it's been a pretty decent standard week. We are moving toward the South Road School lease, so that is soon to be signed. We are starting to look into sort of how to ride contracts that the school department has had for things like pumping out the septic system and this kind of thing. But that project, if you will, is progressing as we would expect. And it's a yellow because Facilities is now dealing with a new facility they weren't expecting to be dealing with when they started the year. But it is not, it's not going to cause us any crises. We had a slight issue with the credit card processing machine over at Parks and Rec. The company that is the service provider is working to make sure that our equipment works, and hopefully that issue will not vex us again as it has this past week. I will note that the yellow in tools and equipment for the Public Works Public Services column there is all about an arborist's truck. You've heard, John talking about this for the last year. We recognize that in a community with as many trees as we've got to really sort of step up to the plate and start dealing with the aging forest that we live in. John has been pointing out that he needs an arborist's truck. We don't have an arborist truck in the fleet. And it's just going to be yellow until we get to a budget that makes it otherwise. With that, unless there are any questions, I will suspend.
Rob, I just wanted to say thank you for bringing the good news with your reports. It's nice to have that tempered with, we get a lot of information and it's not always pleasant, but it's so nice when you come to us with the happy things. So thank you for doing that.
I wish, I could tell you all the stories. This is an amazing crew. Yeah. We are truly fortunate to have such extraordinary people working for the town of South Kingstown. And we get some little note of appreciation, some little email almost every day. Some of them just jump out at you, and the one that I saw this week was among those.
Thank you.
Oh, good moment. Sure. Any questions here at the table? Okay, moving on. Town Solicitor's Report.
Unless there are questions, I'm good.
Can you guess what I'm going to ask about?
I have not yet heard.
Okay.
You're
Purchase
going
and
to
sales.
ask about the purchase and sales agreement for the Matunic property, and several emails are out there, and I haven't heard back yet.
Okay, thank you.
So, moving on to appointments. Do we have any tonight? I don't believe so.
I don't think so, but there is an applicant for the South Kingstown Partnership for Prevention, and if we could schedule an interview for Stephanie Cantor as soon as possible, that would be good.
You know her. Beautiful. Okay. Moving on to item 14D is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to Smith Art Conservation, LLC, for the restoration of the war monument at the Hazard School in an amount not to exceed $33,695, and that would include a contingency of $10,000, and that has been described in a memorandum from the town clerk to the town manager on June 15th. Award of contract for restoration of monument.
Motion to approve item 14D is presented.
Second with a comment, just really excited to see this on here. It's been a long time coming. It's going to be great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And moving on to E, 14E, a resolution supporting the recommendation for the designation of 7 rivers of the Wood Pawcatuck Watershed: Beaver, Chapuxet, Green, Fall Ashway, Pawcatuck, Queen Uskapog, Chinook, and Wood Rivers, as a partnership, wild and scenic rivers, through an act of the United States Congress, with the understanding that this designation would not involve National Park Service ownership or management of these lands, and endorsing the Wood Pawcatuck Wild and Scenic Rivers Stewardship Plan developed by their study committee, and that has been described in a memorandum from our senior planner to the town manager dated June 19th.
Motion to approve item 14E is presented.
All those in favor? Aye. Seeing no oppositions. G is a resolution authorizing the town manager pursuant to Rhode Island Department of Education, RIDE, the school construction regulation section 1.08-1.1, to co-sign the letter from the South Kingstown School Department to RIDE expressing the South Kingstown School Department's intent to submit an application for funding assistance to make necessary repairs, improvements, renovation, and/or construction to school facilities as identified and detailed on the facilities master plan, which is adopted by the South Kingstown School Committee at their meeting held on March 16th of this year.
So I have a few questions. So the way I understand it, Rob, the way you've described this before, it's a vote that the council has to take, but to sign the letter, we would be endorsing their plan.
So, signing the letter that the South Kingstown School District is preparing, it's co-signing the letter.
Right.
Actually is a requirement of the state regulation, but doesn't amount to an endorsement. In fact, here's the letter itself, if I can pull the text here.
I guess I misspoke. What you said to us earlier, to clarify, was that it's really we're acknowledging that we have received notice.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
This
we're
is
aware of the
really,
project.
the letter is a letter from the school department. They, the state of Rhode Island, require that it be signed by multiple parties, and the basic reason for the signing by the chair, the town manager, and the superintendent, it could be any representative, by the way. It doesn't need to be the town manager. It just happens to be the way things are done in South Kingstown most often. But the point is to make sure that everybody's on notice, that the school superintendent isn't making an application that the town council isn't aware of. That's the purpose of having the co-signing. It's not an endorsement of a project. At this point, there isn't a project. This is the beginning of a long planning process that will produce an application that the town council at a later date will be called upon to approve or disapprove as an application.
So I guess then with that clarification, it's a requirement that RIDE puts on that, in my opinion, is meaningless, but I understand it's a requirement that... I don't know, I can't speak for the state of Rhode Island on this or the department. What I can say is that it is beneficial from any grant maker's perspective to know that there's not such disharmony about an issue that it's not going to happen, or that it's going to be, just there's a colloquialism that I won't use here, but a problem from the beginning. Having everyone sign on the letter indicates not an endorsement, but at least an awareness and a state of play that isn't openly hostile, if you will. Right, I get that.
And there's also a financial component to the capital plan, so we all have to be on board.
Right. So we all know, because we've seen the intention of closing buildings and then putting additions on other buildings, what the impact will, the estimated impact is tens of millions of dollars of bonding. So it's a fine line for me. I mean, yes, we're acknowledging that we've been on notice, but we know what the intent is, and it's lots of spending.
That's right. And what again, from the state's perspective, or from any grant maker's perspective, what you'd like to know is that everybody in the community has the awareness that you've just articulated. It's not necessarily the case that there is a plan at this point that says, keep these open, close these, spend tens of millions of dollars, bond this amount of money on this schedule. All of those details will be worked out over the course of the planning of the application. Once the application is complete, it comes before the town council, and the council approves or disapproves that application. The expectation that everybody has going in is that there'll be a good faith effort to get to a workable plan that will make for a workable application. Now, there's a lot of moving parts here, particularly with this particular application in South Kingstown. The school committee has set up a mechanism where there's a plan to close certain schools, but a plan of constant or continuous evaluation of the demographic data. If the data take a particular turn, then the school committee has put in place a policy that says certain numbers will trigger a direction to the superintendent to amend or even pull back a portion of the application that has been developed. So there's a lot of moving parts here. This isn't, by any stretch of the imagination, a simple thing. And I can't say to the town council that by signing this, you're resolving the issue. By signing the letter or having a representative of the town sign the letter, you're buying into, you're accepting responsibility for engaging in a long process.
So to Joe's point, if he, say, were adamantly against the bonding that we've seen suggested in the plans, that's not enough to sort of not approve signing this letter, because you're saying it's just an acknowledgement, it's not an endorsement.
No, I think that anyone on the council who wants to vote against the letter is certainly authorized to do that. You have the legal authority to say, no, a representative of the town shall not sign that letter. Doing so, however, though, is a signal to the state that there is such disharmony and disagreement that a useful application could not be produced, and there will be no application. That's the effect of that.
If the vote loses. If the vote were 3-2 not to sign it.
That's correct.
Then there would be
That's correct.
Impression of disharmony.
That's correct.
Even the other thing is, I agree with Joe that it's tens of millions of dollars, but I also feel that even if nothing is done, let's say this doesn't happen, which I hope it does personally, the schools would still need repair of tens of millions of dollars, according to the Jacobs report.
Just want to clarify, by signing this, Trish could have, we're not acknowledging that we've approved anything in terms of capital money or out.
I think we're just acknowledging that we're aware of the application and willing
And that
to
potentially
move forward.
come down the road.
This letter does not commit the town to expending anything other than the monies necessary and the energy necessary to produce an application. That having been said, it would be disingenuous to say, we don't know where this is going. This letter also implies that we recognize that there is a spend plan associated with this application at some point in the future, and that we're entering down that path or walking down that path knowing that it leads to an application for state monies and a commitment of local monies to improve the schools.
We would have control over that because they would have to come to us for any allocation of monies in the budget.
There are
or
really
capital,
a couple of mechanisms that the town council has to control the process. First, the town council, as part of the application requirement, also appoints members to a school building committee, which is involved in planning for the project, developing the application alongside with the school committee and the school department, and overseeing the construction if the project were to ever get to the construction phase. And again, it's anticipated that if we're starting down that path, we intend to be there. The other way that the town council has control is through the purse strings. Absolutely, the town council has the final word on whether or not bonding for this project will be, well, I shouldn't say final word because ultimately the public does. Right. Whether the public will get a referendum saying, shall we bond for this, is a council call. So the commitment of local monies and the commitment of the good faith and credit of the town of South Kingstown is a decision in the council's control, and ultimately, if the council were to decide, would be a question resolved by the voters at a bond referendum.
So, and potentially, you may jeopardize that additional funding for reimbursement because Barrington, even though they've already started the construction on the high school, they've put in an application to fall under that $250 million. So timing is crucial. If we don't sign it, at least just the intent, you could jeopardize millions of dollars. I mean, it's no secret the high school is in major need of capital improvements. That's a given. So I think if you just go with that notion, it can be changed at any time. One thing I did want to ask Mike, I know in what we did in North Kingstown, I don't know if it's different here, they had two separate committees. They had the committee that worked specifically on the capital project that got submitted to RIDE, and there was a makeup of that committee, but they also had the building construction committee that managed the construction of the facilities and the council's oversight. So any bond monies that were spent were actually approved by the town council. All contracts were approved at the town council level. Here's one. Wow. I have a question. We've been talking about this for, seems like forever. And at one point we discussed if we were to deny acknowledging this letter, or if we didn't authorize you to sign it, the school committee said that would be it. The project would die because they weren't able to take the letter back and revise it and resubmit it to us. So I'm just wondering, when you talk about that other stage in this process where the town council, have to approve the application, is that the same, has the same standard been set there where if we were to deny that part of the application in that process, would they just say the whole thing would die there too? Or would there be room for sort of a negotiation, if you will, where we could say, hey, we're not cool with all of this application, there are parts we're uncomfortable with?
So there's a couple of things about that. First, my understanding was that if there were no letter co-signed by a representative of the town, the school committee's understanding of guidance that's been given by its council is that they cannot come back at the same question that they've already answered. That's a procedural question, and I don't know all of the details of that procedural question. It's not a question of whether they'd be willing to reconsider. It's a question of whether the procedures would allow them to do that. So I can't give you a great deal of detail. I can only tell you it should be bounded as they are procedurally boxed in right now, so they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you whether that's true or not true. It's the representation that's been made.
Okay.
In terms of the review, approval, and disapproval by the town council of a future application, not the letter of intent to file an application, but the future application as it is developed, there is no procedure in state law that I'm aware of, and I've looked, and there's no procedure in our local rules. There's no limitation on how the town council interacts with the school committee that would prevent the town council from expressing its opinion, expressing its desires, and trying to influence the ultimate shape of the application. The best way to do that is through the building committee appointments that the town council makes, but you're invited into that application once it's begun, because the regulations, the state regulations, say that you have a role there. The charter prohibition on interference with school business doesn't apply because the state regulation specifically invites you into the process once you're in the process. Okay. We're not in the process yet, so we're in a different place right now.
Right. I just was concerned that if we got to that second stage where, that somebody would say, oh, well, you approved the whole application, it's all or nothing. Like, there wouldn't be any sort of ability for us to provide any input about how we feel about parts of it. But you're saying that since we'll be kind of involved throughout this leading up to that, right, that's where our input comes in.
From my perspective, the key point is pre-application and application. Mm-hmm. The regulations say nothing about town council involvement or town involvement in the pre-application other than you have to co-sign a letter of intent and you have to name, well, actually, you don't even necessarily have to name committee members. It says, the regulation says, if local charter or bylaws require it, then the council is involved in the naming of committee members, and ours does. But in the pre-application process, there's no specific involvement of anybody other than the school department. So in that environment, we are constrained by the charter, which says only the school committee does school administration, school operations, and school policy. Once we're into an application, however, the regulations then carve out activities and things for the town and the town council to be involved in. The review of an application, the approval of an application, the disapproval of an application, the submission of an item for a public bond referendum. All of those things are specifically required by the state regulation, and because the state regulation trumps the no interference provision of the charter, ironically, you've got more of a role to play once the state drags you into it.
One thing that would make me feel better, and we're going to go to, I don't want to talk about age, but I'm going to have to because it's important in this context, is that I think that if we had 2 council members added, rather than 1, we would have a little bit more control and input in the process. Also, I feel that the town manager should be the other person, but that's just my opinion. Right. But we're talking about G, by...
Okay, well, I appreciate, Rob, all your clarification. Trish, I value your opinion. I appreciate your input. I agree there's bonding that probably needs to happen for some things, certainly some of the high school stuff and maybe some other stuff, but I'm not comfortable with the level that the plan calls for. However, I understand that this is pretty preliminary to that, and we do have the opportunity and the involvement further down the road. I just guess I want to be clear that I'm going into this with eyes wide open. This is big picture.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hesitant to support it because at its face value, it sounds like you're endorsing their plan, even though I know we're not at that point yet. But, you know, it's uncomfortable because there's certain parts of the plan that have been presented that, you know, I just don't think are good for the town and on a myriad of levels. And it just, it makes me nervous that we're not going to be able to have that sort of involvement after this. I'm reassured by some of the stuff that you said. I certainly wouldn't want us to miss out on the chance for the housing reimbursements that they're offering and the incentives that they have. And I think that, you know, probably 80% of the plan is something I can get behind 100%. But it's just so hard to, I don't know. It's difficult to weigh. For me.
I guess I'm trying to wrap my mind around the fact that if we sign this, we're signing a letter of intent. And we still have the opportunity to receive funding. If we refuse to sign this, we jeopardize the opportunity to receive funding. But by signing the letter of intent, we still have certain controls over how this money or the intentions of these allocations of funds will be spent until they go to the taxpayers. And isn't it really up to the taxpayers to decide?
Yeah, and then the other thing I'll say is that, you know, traditionally I don't give much weight to whether a vote is 4-1 or 3-2. It's either an up or down vote to me. But with this one, I think it has a little more importance that it's unanimous to the people who are receiving the letter.
I think that's probably true.
I certainly don't usually care.
You have feelings.
About whether it's 4-1.
I think, yes, we've been hearing about this issue quite a bit over the past couple of years. And I think it wouldn't be fair if we just sort of cut the process short at this point. And I think that's what we'd be doing, and making a political statement rather than committing ourselves fully to the process that was begun really at our table when we were talking to the school committee about facilities. And I think serious and valid concerns have been raised by community members, by the Y Wakefield group, and we're going to hash those out hopefully as the process moves forward. But I think it wouldn't be fair to stop it at this point.
And I agree with Joe in regards to the a unanimous vote would be better than a 3-2 vote.
Have any more discussion?
I'll make a motion that we approve item 14G as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to 14H is a resolution appointing the following individuals pursuant to the Rhode Island Department of Education School Construction Regulations, Section 1.08-1.2, to serve on the school building committee that will monitor the planning and construction activities associated with our district plan to make repairs, improvements, renovation, and/or construction. I will read this list, but then I know we talked about this forever. So number 1 would be a town council member. Number 2 would be Patricia Sundlin, town finance director. Number 3 would be Amy Reiner, town director of administrative services. Number 4 would be Wayne Pimentel, our town building official. 5 would be Melissa Toll, South Kingstown resident with architectural, engineering, and/or construction experience and as recommended by the school committee. And number 6 would be Pauline Lisi, and she is the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. We don't have to limit the list to this number. We've had quite a bit of dialogue in the work session. We can continue that here, so I open this up for discussion before a motion is made.
I've been thinking about it, and I kind of mentioned it in the previous agenda item. The way this is currently set up, I don't like the fact that we would really only be appointing 4 out of the 11 folks to the building committee. I think that the people they have on here are definitely important, and I would like to work with the school committee. So personally, if I were to make a decision on my own, I would say that we would increase the number from 11 to 14, and then appoint, maybe I'm missing someone, but definitely I would appoint another town council member to that committee, and I feel strongly that that the town manager should be part of the discussion as well.
I just have a question. If we appoint members of the town council and it changes in November, do those members stay as appointed, or do we have to reappoint them in November if the committee changes?
Yeah, you'd be making changes. If they're designated as town council members, the new town council would have their own prerogative of changing.
Gotcha. Okay. I agree with Bryant that I think we should be appointing the majority on this. And because the school committee has asked us to consider some of their appointments that they wanted to get in there, I think it's important that we maintain that.
Actually, I made a mistake. I think that would go to 13, not 14.
Right. Let's just do 20.
Well, then we wouldn't be appointing the majority, certainly.
I'm sorry?
If it was only 13, even at 14, we'd just be 7 apiece, if I'm calculating this correct.
Well, 6, 7.
So the list, what do we got?
Yeah, I was just going to say, can we have the list as it stands right now?
Yep, let's pull the list up.
They've appointed 5 currently, right?
They've appointed 5, and Melissa Toll as a community member with a background in construction.
Is there another community member, though, for their...
There's only one. The appointment of Ms. Toll was premised on the notion that the council would appoint her. So they've appointed her pending your appointment of her.
Well, on their website, I mean, on their board docs, tomorrow's meeting, they're considering 3 other people for 1 committee member position. Maybe I read that wrong, but let's see. Hold on a second. I see an agenda item, June 26th, South Kingstown School Committee meeting agenda, appointment of community member to contingency committee.
Oh, I think that's
That's a different one.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the one
sorry.
that we discussed where we had the contract compliance committee meeting, and I think he's changing it to the contingency.
So there's been some discussion, and I'm not intimately familiar with the details of this, but some discussion of the school committee appointing another committee or subcommittee, but a committee that can sort of monitor and make recommendations about what would happen should schools be disposed of. I've been in conversations with the superintendent about that strategy. They're constrained as well. I mean, on their side, there's a non-interference with town business consideration for them, and they can't actually set up a committee to say this is what should happen to schools after they're disposed of. That's your purview. So they're trying to figure out how to make useful recommendations, and I think that's the committee that they're looking at tomorrow night.
All right, can we get a clarification who's on it right now?
Who have they nominated?
So for the school building committee, it's my understanding that they've appointed the superintendent, a school committee member, is it Risa, I think?
Risa.
Risa, I'm sorry. the South Kingstown School District Maintenance Director, the high school principal, the South Kingstown School District CFO, and Melissa Towell, subject to the town council's endorsement, appointment. It's sort of an odd two-step.
That's 6 without counting Pauline Lisi.
That's 6 without counting Pauline Lisi, who would be appointed by the town council under the discussion that had been had about how we set up a committee.
Then we would need to appoint 8 altogether then, in order to have the majority.
That would only give us 50%.
No, because Pauline would be
It
included.
went to 15, we'd have one more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we discussed in the work session, the town charter has in mind that whenever a school building committee is set up, that the town council will have a majority of the appointments and the school committee will have a minority of the appointments. There's some issue raised there because the charter specifically says the number shall be 7, 4 by the town council, 3 by the school committee. Since state law requires it to be at least 8, you have to get above 8 in order for the town council to maintain a majority.
So if we decide that we're going to appoint more people, we would have to do it tonight in order for them to submit their application with our letter.
It is preferable to have this done. The only other way it could happen for them to meet their March deadline would be to resolve this at the next council meeting. I have not talked to the superintendent about how bad that would put the schools in terms of an application. I think it's preferable to resolve this.
So let's try to get it done tonight, if we can.
And I mean, I just want to express my frustration that we come up on these sort of tight deadlines where it's like you have to do it now, or, you know, we could delay things, especially with this, because, I mean, it's certainly very confusing and it's hard to follow. And I'm happy to work it out however we need to tonight, but it is frustrating that we can't say, oh, well, we'll get more info, or we'll find more people, or we'll do this and wait for 2 weeks. You know, it's like, it's a little infuriating.
Well, I think that, again, if the council really wants to put this off to the next meeting, the schools have suggested that their deadline is October 1st. Now, as Trish points out tonight, we're actually in something of a race to get these in and to be taken seriously by the state.
I understand. I know, and I'm not faulting you at all. I'm just, it's frustrating.
I would be, I guess, comfortable going to 14 or 15. 14, assuming that, you know, Pauline Lisi is definitely a school appointment, but Melissa, as a town resident, we're generous and we consider her one of our appointments. Then we have to come up with 3 new spots, other than the ones that are listed.
That's if we go to 15, right?
No, this is just 14. So Bryant suggested one more town council member and the town manager, and then we'd be looking at sort of a question mark. I would feel...
If I might suggest, the person we would have recommended was Mark Russo, who is now the facilities supervisor for the town. While the schools will have satisfied the state requirement that someone in the building maintenance field be part of the process by appointing the school maintenance person, it might be helpful for us to have another person who has expertise in building maintenance, particularly looking out from sort of the whole school, the whole town-wide, multiple diverse facilities perspective.
I think that that's warranted. I would also think that it might be wise to put another community member on the committee.
Do we have to name them tonight, Rob?
They're looking to
That's
have an
preferred.
application that has the names of the state requires the names of the building committee members.
They had multiple applications that they chose from for that Melissa Towle. There were other people they interviewed too. So
That's correct.
Could we pick from that pool if we wanted to?
Good.
Or even looking at the folks that applied to the contingency committee. I think at least, actually all three are community members, I think,
But wouldn't they have to give us some sort of indication that
that they would do it, right?
Yeah.
I foresaw this happening tonight, strangely enough. I took the liberty of reaching out to Sean Kruger, who I believe many of us spoke to about the LEA numbers and the various...
Jen Kruger's husband? Yeah.
I think he's sitting in the, is that you?
There he is.
No.
Oh.
He said he was willing to serve on the committee, and I would put his name forward.
Can we do that, though? I mean, it doesn't seem fair to appoint somebody, an extra member of the community, without first inviting the community to apply.
And then interviewing.
Right. That makes me uncomfortable. Not that I don't think that you'd be a wonderful addition. I just want to make sure it's fair to anybody that would want to do that.
It's our prerogative, I believe.
Yeah, the regulations don't require any particular process.
So how many more do we need here? We've got...
Well, to get to 14, which would be 7 and 7, I think we need one more.
Right.
Right?
Would that include Rob?
Actually, that would be 8 and 7, I think.
I have Raisa, Roland, Kristen, Marianne, Melissa.
I have 7 on the school committee side.
Right, 1, 2, 3.
Is Roland on the committee?
Yes, I think the chair of the school committee is on this committee, right?
I do not have the school committee members' names.
I thought,
How could I read it without knowing?
I see Raisa says it, but I thought,
That's my understanding.
so is it on that chart?
So this is the chart that we have from the school department,
What is the 1 and 2? Who's 1?
and it is
Kristen?
Kristen, Raisa,
Yep.
Wayne, Russell Hill.
That's the first time I've seen that name.
He must be.
He's the maintenance director for the school department. The school principal from the Kingstown.
Private Mazenod.
And her plan here, by the way, on these principals is for them to sort of cycle in as their facility comes into focus. McGuire again, just rotating in. Towel. And Trish. This is the list that
And Amy.
was sent over.
Amy too, right?
Amy should be on the list. This is not the complete list, unless it's just fouled in the
They
presentation.
left some spaces for us, I think.
Right.
Bottom.
And then Pauline.
You zoom out.
Yeah.
So we have enough for 4 more people.
This is not going to be the most helpful way to do this.
With their list, we could potentially, Rob, you should be there, 2 town council members, and if you think Mark Russo would be the appropriate, that would bring us to 14. That would be 4 different
Yeah.
people.
And that would be 7 and 7, is that right?
That would be 7 and 7.
So we would need one more if we wanted the majority. Well, that's going to be a point.
So with the 8 names that have been talked about, you would have, assuming that Ms. Towle is considered a school committee appointment, you'd have 8 by the council and 6 by the school committee.
Did you count Pauline?
I was keeping Pauline as the council's pick at this point, but.
But there's no, okay, yeah, where he says the school committee member, okay. So Roland is not on that list then? So it's not it's not two school
No.
committee members, it's just one?
That's correct. There is one school committee member.
Maybe we can decide who the town council members are?
Does anybody have an interest?
I would have an interest, but it's okay if I'm not on there either, it doesn't matter.
You might be a good fit based on your background with the whole legacy facility study as well, and the background that you've had this past year. I'm not going to put you on the spot either, Liz, but you also shared that experience, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be on it if there's no interest from someone else.
Yeah, I mean, I would have an interest, obviously, because I'm such a big mouth, but my suspicion is that there would be a fair amount of meetings during the day, and I probably couldn't make them, and I'm a 55-hour-a-week guy at work, so
We know you like to
I
be fed by.
certainly cannot.
once in a while I like to see my wife.
I definitely can't attend during the day. My office is not even in town.
Yeah, no, she doesn't want to see me.
I'd be interested in the position as well, but it's,
You think my suspicion is right, that there would be a fair amount of daytime meetings?
It's hard to know, but my experience with these types of committees is you're trying to accommodate everybody's work schedule, so what you end up with are late afternoon meetings or early morning meetings.
Yeah, our contract compliance meetings generally are in the morning.
Yeah. I don't think I could.
Yeah.
Do it.
I definitely could not, based on my work schedule. I'm not even in town.
And that probably makes some people happy.
I can be flexible with my schedule.
Same here.
So we have three fighting for two.
Oh, and I'm not fighting if.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I like to stir it up a little.
well,
Meeting for that.
How many people are on that list? Did we miss someone?
Well, and and the other thing is, it's not a life sentence, right?
You can
Not a life
rotate in. Well, I guess you can't. I mean, I guess you could, but it probably wouldn't be a good
I
idea.
mean, if the communication were open to the council, and I think it will be with involvement, that it is something that you might do for a period of time and trade off. I don't know how well that would work as
And again,
a continuous.
And then
It could always change in November.
yeah, the election could change it completely.
Right, and this committee really won't sit for a while, right?
Actually, I would imagine that they're going to sit fairly soon after the application process begins. So I wouldn't be surprised if they met, in September or October. I don't know.
Right.
I haven't had, a conversation about when they're going to meet, but.
Joe's out, I'm out because of our commitments right now and work schedules. It's up to you guys. Maybe we can have three. Who knows?
I think Chelsea's raising her hand. She wants to do it.
No. No, she wasn't.
I'm just teasing.
You said I'm
Abel,
mad
if
up
you,
to
if
here.
you really
I'm
want to
way
do it,
too
that's
busy.
fine.
I'm sure I'm right there in the same place as both of you.
Yeah, I mean,
I know that from my perspective, throughout this process, you guys have been more involved, on that committee. I would say both of you have stuck yourselves to one or the other of the options pretty strongly, which might just give balance to the committee. So that's a good reason potentially to do it. I've sort of vacillated between a number of them, so that might also provide the balance. So I don't know.
It'd be easy enough to roll into, and I think that balance is important. Like you said, I mean, I think Bryant and I are on different sides on this, and I think we were able to go to the contract compliance meetings with that in mind and create that balance. So I'm happy to keep doing it. So I'm happy to be on the committee.
To you. flip a coin.
So seeing no chance of any more production, it's 10 o'clock.
Anyone have a quarter?
Who made this agenda? Really? No.
Hmm.
All right, so that's 8 then, right?
I think.
And the 8 names are?
It would be Rob, you. Do you want to do this? We didn't even ask you. Is that okay?
I work for you guys. You wind me up, point me in a direction, I go.
You need to know what's going on, I think.
I will tell you this. I feel very comfortable with the slate as it was presented because we have Amy, we have Trish. We've got competent people who have my complete confidence. So I don't feel that it's necessary for me to be there. That having been said, I work for you, and you want to wind me up and make sure I'm in there being my adored.
I think this is super important to the town overall, that the more brains we can have at the table, the better.
And having you there is not any indication of lack of faith in.
No, I didn't take it that way, and I'm sure they didn't either.
Good.
Okay, so what are the names? So
I think it was Rob, Liz, Bryant, Mark Russo, and we're taking Pauline as ours.
Amy.
Trish, Amy, and Wayne.
Do you want to turn that into a motion?
And that might be too many.
That's 1, 2, 3.
I'm sorry, Mike? Did I hear a Mike?
Is there Mark or Mike Russo?
Mark Russo. And Wayne Pimentel.
Yep.
We got
It's
one.
a 7. They're taking Pauline, yes? No? Oh, we're taking Pauline, that's 8.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
So it's really splitting it down the middle.
No, because I think if we take Pauline, that gives them 6.
Oh, my computer.
That's correct.
Wait,
6 and 8.
Pauline is a school committee appointment.
Okay.
And
It makes it 7 to 7.
Okay.
My computer died, so I'll just go by the regular agenda.
You said touch.
See? Maybe it's...
Here it comes.
It's battery, it's a battery thing.
You're plugged in.
Yeah.
Is that as clear as mud, Rob?
So we've got the list. The issue again now, though, is my understanding is that the council's objective is to make sure that it's respecting the charter provision that says a majority of the members should be appointed by the council.
So the only other option
Hi, Colin.
would be to not appoint Pauline, potentially, I guess. And then there would be 13.
Pauline has not been appointed by the school committee.
Right.
She has not been.
No.
They put her on our list, though?
They want us.
They requested that the council appoint her.
Okay. We have the names, sorry.
Well,
Okay.
That doesn't give us the majority, though. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
What I'm saying is you're still
Need one more
non-majority unless you can either advise the council or the school committee that you've declined to appoint the assistant superintendent. She's welcome to attend, she's welcome to participate, but the council has declined to appoint her, in which case you've got the majority, but we're short Pauline. Or you can add one more. I mean, that's the way you get to the majority. That's
We had
I'm sure that Pauline is going to be involved whether or not she's on this committee. I mean, and Kristen is a member of this committee by default, correct?
That's correct. She is a state-mandated member.
Right. So I mean, I'm comfortable leaving Pauline off, not because I, don't want her there, but because I think that she'll still be an asset to that committee. And plus, I can't think of one more person to add, so.
I'm in the same boat.
I don't
Okay.
understand why we can't add her. Maybe
Because then it would be even.
Well, I have Rob,
It was
Amy,
7 and
Trish, Wayne, but that's 4.
No, what we're saying about even versus not even is 2 of the people on our original list came over from the school committee recommendation.
Oh, so they're not, like, Amy's not ours?
No,
Amy is.
It was Pauline and the community member.
I'm just going to state again that I know we haven't had a chance to interview people, but I think we've all spoken to Mr. Kruger, and I think for a matter this sensitive that's drawn this much attention from the public, that we should have somebody from that group represented on the committee. I think in particular, Rob brought up in the work session how part of what this committee is going to be doing is looking at enrollment numbers, statistics, and my experience with Mr. Kruger is that he knows how to dig down into those statistics, and he'll give a balanced point of view to what exists on the committee.
I don't doubt his abilities. I'm sure he would be a wonderful asset on this, but I'm really uncomfortable appointing somebody without saying that we were going to appoint another community member so that people had the opportunity to step forward. I would be really totally against that. And like I said, it's not personal towards you at all. I would love to have you, but I would feel it was unfair to other community members to not.
Well, yeah, part of me feels like there's someone on this contingency thing that would be a great asset as well. But
Yeah, so this situation is created because there's been this crisis. We often get these things that are, they want an answer right away. They want an answer at this meeting, and we normally would have prepared and maybe put it out to the community.
so I would be in favor of not appointing Pauline at this time.
So with that, I think you've got the makings of a resolution. The resolution would read, a resolution appointing the following individuals pursuant to the Rhode Island Department of Education School Construction Regulations Section 1.08-1.2 to serve on the school building committee that will monitor the planning and construction activities associated with the South Kingstown School District's plan to make repairs, improvements, renovations, and or construction to school facilities. And the list is, I'm going to hand it over to...
I want to write this down.
The list is Town Council members Liz Gledhill and Bryant DeCruz, Town Manager Robert Zarnetsky, the Facilities Manager Mark Russo, our Finance Director Trish Sunderland, Amy Reiner, Director of Administrative Services, and Wayne Pimentel, the Building Official, which is a total of 7. Mark Russo, Facilities Manager. Yep. That amounts to 7 appointments.
We're missing
Melissa Towle?
Towle.
No, she's back on the school committee's list.
Okay, cool, good.
So we need to appoint her.
Right. We need to appoint Melissa.
And Melissa Toll will be the 8th member being appointed this evening.
Which then leaves 5 on the other list. Is that correct?
So this makes the committee 13, 7 for the town council, 6 for school committee.
Correct.
I counted 8.
That's 8 you just appointed.
Yeah, but there's a list of 5.
2 of them are... or no, one of them is for the school committee, Melissa Tell.
Yeah, we're doing the school committee, adding someone for them.
It's a tricky thing because
She's the resident.
you're appointing her again. I actually think that you could treat the Towle appointment
As a school.
as a school committee appointment endorsed by the town council tonight.
Yep. So that gives us 7 and them 6, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
6, right.
That sounded like a motion, Rob, so I'm going to say that it was. So I make a motion to approve item 14H as the town manager just indicated.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions, abstentions, recusals? Seeing none, each carries.
I don't blame you for glazing over there.
No, I was thinking of something completely different.
Come on, we got to get out of here. We have a lot to do. I is a resolution eliminating the building permit fees, electrical and mechanical permit fees, plumbing permit fees, and plan review fees from the town's schedule of fees to comply with the adoption of statewide building permit fees for all cities and towns that go into effect on July 1st. And this has been described in a memorandum from the building official to the town manager. I don't have a date on that, but it was a memorandum.
Good evening. Gladly answer any questions anyone may have relative to this.
The memorandum was pretty clear.
All right.
For me.
No questions here.
I would make a motion, we approve item 14J as presented.
Second.
Aye. This is aye.
Oh, aye, I'm so sorry, aye. God, it's getting late.
I didn't say aye, I'm saying that.
Aye.
Item number aye. Okay, so we have a motion for aye. Do we have a second for aye?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's late, we're tired. Moving on to J, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to file an application to the Charge Up program. And this is through the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources, and it's for a grant of up to $67,500 to purchase 4 electrical vehicle charging station and 1 electrical vehicle as purchased in a memorandum from the senior planner to the town manager. This was dated June 21st.
So I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
With an apology for asking questions.
No.
Just briefly then, so the grant is for $67,000, about $1,000. Pretty much pays, I think, for the charging stations, but only a portion of the vehicles?
That's correct.
Do we have an idea, and I know we got a list of suggested retail prices of vehicles, of what we're planning to add and what impact that would have, and would it be on this budget year?
Yes, it would be this budget year.
18-19.
Yep, yeah. It's this budget year, this cycle. The vehicle subsidy through the grant, or the portion toward the purchase price, is, I believe, $7,000. So it's each of those suggested retail prices minus $7,000,
okay,
which makes them roughly competitive with a gasoline engine vehicle. This is a program that's really about pushing the infrastructure out there. It's not as much about pushing the vehicles out there. It's a way for us to try an electric vehicle in town government without going whole hog on a fleet and finding out whether or not it works. I mean, the range in electric vehicles is somewhat limited. It's not going to work for all of our applications.
Right.
It likely works for the building inspectors going around town doing
short trips and then
short
back.
trips and that kind of thing. So it looks like it's a vehicle that would meet a need. It looks like a vehicle that might work for us, might reduce our operational costs. It's a good experimental opportunity. I don't see this as, necessarily the next big wave. I see it as an opportunity for us to try something new without incurring, the full cost of doing that.
Right. And so one observation is that most of these alternative energy efforts often don't work without a subsidy of some kind. I think I certainly would be willing to try it. It's something we should probably try anyway. Are we confident that we have reserves, say, in certain accounts that would make up the difference?
Well, there's money in the account for a vehicle. We can buy a vehicle. The problem right now for us is timing. Right. We've been trying to figure out whether or not we can actually wait long enough to use the grant application. We're playing around with the vehicles we've got around Town Hall and trying to make sure that we don't run into trouble. With the recent resignation of one of our building inspectors, we have a little bit more flexibility with the pool cars, and we'll figure out how to go for a couple of months if that's what the application's going to take to get us there.
Okay.
If it lasts any longer than 6, 8, 10 weeks, we may just have to pull the trigger and buy a vehicle, a gasoline vehicle.
And we're planning, according to your chart there, to replace that person in the building.
We are planning to do that as quickly as possible.
Right. So And some of that information I asked about may be in the memo. I didn't get all the way through it, so.
It really is just, an opportunity to apply for money. If we get the money, that's great, then we take the next step, because it's a good idea to figure out whether these technologies work for you. If it's going to save you money in the long haul on operations, it's a good thing. If it's not, and it doesn't work for, the only way to find out whether it works for the inspectors really is to give them one and see if it works. Again, it's not the full cost of the vehicle. It's not a huge savings on the vehicle either. So this is not, this is not a slam dunk, let's go, apply this technology in a big way. This is, let's test the water and see whether this works for us. On the charging stations, on the other hand, it's very simple technology. You run a wire from the nearest building and you put it on a little post, and you hook up a little software and you let people swipe their credit card at the ones that are public, and out back you put a little keypad on it and only town employees are plugging in, that kind of thing. So it's a relatively easy thing. Of course, it doesn't do much good to have the plug out back if you don't have any vehicles plugging into it. So.
Yep.
Well, theoretically, the electric cars are actually fairly simple as well, more simple than gas-powered engines. So we should save on maintenance and fuel at the least. So I'm excited that the Sustainability Committee identified this grant. That's a great job.
We have a motion.
Motion to approve item 14J.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions? Seeing none, let's move on to K, which is a resolution adopting a resolution in support of anti-vehicle idling, as shown in Exhibit 3 on the agenda. I thought that was me, but mine doesn't do that.
Motion to approve item 14K as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. A resolution authorizing tax collection procedures as shown in Exhibit 4 on your agendas.
I'll make a motion that we approve item 14L as presented. This is sort of the formality at the end of the budget season.
Right. So I'll make a second, and I have lots of questions. I'm just.
All those in favor? Aye. Next, we go to item 15. We have to move to a closed executive session, so we need a motion that we move into a closed executive session.
So moved? Yeah.
Oh, pursuant to Rhode Island General Law
Yeah, I think I
42.
need to say it.
Oh, you want? Go
I'm
ahead.
the one making the motion. Closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5A2 to discuss matters pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation regarding South Kingstown Municipal Employees Association, NEARI.
Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We now move to a closed executive session. Aye.